Keep doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result is the definition of insanity, according to the great Einstein. And I see that a lot with people's training programs and strength training programs, which we're going to be talking about today, as they get onto a strength training program, and wherever they get that from, whether it be from a trainer or from a magazine or from an article or from social media or YouTube, so some sort of guru, and off they go and they get that program and off they go, and they don't get the results that they dreamed of or expected. And that is a common thing which I've found in my 39 years as an exercise professional. And I've trained people from the general population to the disease, to rehabilitation, to the young, to the old, and to the elite. And I found when people go into a program, they have these expectations and this drive or these goals or dreams of what they want to achieve, whether it be lose weight, build up, get strong, get fast. And they go in there and they do the program, and what is a common thing is they start to get some results, because something is always better than nothing. And those results over time start to diminish. Then they start to plateau, and sometimes they actually start to decrease. You actually start losing results. You start getting weaker, and then eventually you get frustrated and you end up keep pushing. And what will I do? I do more of what I've already done. I just do more, and they end up getting injured. They get dismayed, disappointed, and then they give up, and until the next time they get this burst of motivation because they watched a motivational movie or motivational clip, and they're off again, and they go find another program, and off they go. So let's have a look at in my view, the 7 reasons why people don't get the results they expect, what they are promised, and what they dreamed of. And the first one of that is that, yes, everyone has goals and dreams of training for whatever goals that might be, whether it be losing weight or building up, what it might be, and you have this expectation of you want to be the best version of yourself, or you want to be the best you can possibly be. So you start to get a program which is not individualized to you. You start searching the internet or searching the gym, and if you want to put on muscle, you find the biggest guy or the Mr. Olympia. If you want to get lean, you find the leanest person or the fittest person or the person in the best shape, and you go up and you say, hey, how did you do it? And they say, I did this, and this is how you should do it. And they go, fantastic. So they take that program, someone else's program or generic program, and they go and they dedicate themselves to that program, expecting that they're going to get the results that that person got, not fully understanding of why did that person get the results they got. And sometimes it's not always the program. They get the results just because of who they are, and they will do any program and they're going to get the results. So one of the big challenges I find is that you're doing other programs which are not suited to you. They're suited to the physiology, the biomechanics, to the genetics of someone else. For example, if you model your program off the elite of the supermodel or the super fitness guru online or the super bodybuilder or the super athlete, and you're not a super genetic, then you're going to find yourself getting into a bit of trouble. When I mean trouble, I mean there's that you're not going to get the results that they get because you're not them. And B, if you keep doing what they do and you're not suited to that, then you could have adverse effects. In the worst cases, you get injured and then you stop training altogether. And I guess with training is that you're providing a stimulus to the body that causes stress. And that stress gets the body to physiologically adapt, because the body doesn't like stress, so it gets stronger, or it changes, or it physiologically transitions itself into a more effective, efficient working machine or organism, so it can deal with that stress better if that stress presents itself again. So you provide a stimulus that provides a stress that stimulates an adaptation for the body to transform itself physiologically, to be better physiologically, to deal with that stress if it comes down the track again, which you naturally present to itself in your training program. So everyone has different adherences to stress, and everyone has the different physiological changes individual to their genetics to different stresses. For example, if I get 2 people and I give them exactly the same program, exactly the same nutrition, exactly the same, they're not all going to get exactly the same results. Some will get more muscle faster, some will be slower, some will lose weight faster, some will lose weight slower. Some people just look at weights and they start to put on muscle, and other people are slugging their way out in the gym. And I've talked about this in the previous Kman on putting on muscle. But what's really important is everybody's different for genetical reasons, lifestyle reasons, social reasons, motivational, psychological reasons. And I guess stress is like if I got a nail file, for example, excuse me, and I get this nail file and I put that's the stimulus, the nail file is the stimulus, and I rub my skin, that presents a stress on the skin. And that has a wearing effect and breaks it down. And then the body says, well, hey, I have to prepare for if you're going to keep presenting that stimulus and that stress to me over a period of time in the future. So that wearing down, the body physiologically changes to lay down more skin, make it thicker, and forming a callus. And then I present the stress again and present the stress again. However, everyone has different skin. You know, some people have skin like a bricklayer labourer, and some people have nice soft skin like tissue paper. Therefore, the same stress on different people is going to cause different levels of damage, and everyone's going to adapt faster or slower depending on their genetics. It's like a stress of myself wanting to get a tan, for example, and as you can see, I'm not really the tanning type of person. You know, my heritage is from Ireland, and I've got fair, freckly type skin. So for me to go out and get a tan is going to be very different than my wife getting a tan, where she's naturally very brown, and she'll go out in the sun and she'll lay out there for hours without suntan, and she goes from her current colour to just tan and darker, 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 darker. I myself, if I go out there, I will soon burn. I'll get pink, then red, then I'll bubble up in blisters, and then I'll peel and I'll go back to white. Therefore, if I spend the same amount of time in the sun as my wife with the same temperature and the same intensity, I'm going to actually just burn myself like a fried egg on the bitumen on a 40-degree day. So if I'm going to develop a tan, I have to go into in different temperatures and different frequencies and different durations and different recoveries. Everybody's different. Everyone tans differently. Everyone forms calluses differently. Everyone's results from their strength training or weight loss program or their diet will be very different. So the biggest challenge I find, one of the biggest challenges is number one, is that the program that people are on is not their program. It's not customized to their body genetics and their body's ability to withstand a stress, and their body's ability to adapt over a period of time, and how much the body can adapt and how much time they need in between the stimulus and the stresses for them to get the maximal return on their training. So number one is, I see a lot of people training like Olympic athletes, but they're not Olympic athletes, or they're training like Mr. Bodybuilders and not bodybuilders. Because if you look at these elite, whether it be bodybuilders or marathon runners, or whether it be gymnasts, or whether it be the social gurus who have perfect bodies, first of all, they have amazing genetics just to start with. And involved in those genetics is their body responds very easily and quickly to stresses, whether it be putting on muscle or getting stronger. And they have good biomechanical leverages in how they're designed. They have a good skeletal system. They have a good muscular system. They have a high density of fast-twitch muscle fibers, and they naturally have more muscle fibers in their muscle bellies, and they have better leverage in generating force, and they have a better endocrine system, cardiovascular system, and all the different systems in the body. And then because they have this, they're more encouraged to go do a sport or an activity or an elite. And because they respond well, they keep going up and getting better and better. And then they change their whole lifestyle, and they have a whole lifestyle which is very conducive to the great results that they get. And then they take the perfect nutrition, and they have supplements, and some of them will go down the path of taking little extra chemical additives to really accelerate those results, because they're encouraged to get to that elite level, whether it be the elite level of being a guru to everyone else to idolize, or elite level to win a gold medal in a world championship, Olympic Games, whatever it might be. So everything they do is genetically and lifestyle perfectly made, yet the average Joe or Joan they all say, hey, I want those results, I'm going to do their program. If I wanted to be a marathon runner and I took up the training program of a Kenyan marathon runner, an Olympian, I would just within 2 days of doing their volume and their speed and their training, I would burn myself out. If I train like a Mr. Olympia bodybuilder, I'm not going to be able to cope with that because I'm not that person. I don't have all those extra things around them, and let alone their genetics. So it's very important that over time that you work out for yourself. We're going to go through the other 6 main things that you can play with, and then you're going to have to over time model the program based on your genetics and your lifestyle and your expectations. And if you do that, you're going to get great results. You may not be an Olympian, you may not be a top guru, but you're going to be the best you can be based on what I guess life has served you and what you've made out of your life. So number 1 is that it's important that through testing and measuring, you're applying all the fundamental principles which I'm going to cover, is that you over time work out what's going to be best for you, what are the best exercises, what are the best repetitions and rest intervals and frequency of training and all of that, and you can work that out. And I know myself in my experience when I was a young bodybuilder, I did compete in bodybuilding. I never went to the elite level. I did go to the elite level in my other sport, in martial arts, but over time I found out what seemed to work for me. And when I was young, I thought, do what I do and you get what I did. And a lot of people, friends of mine, say, you're getting great results. And say, come and train with me. And I found I burnt them out, or they didn't get the results that I did because they didn't have my genetics and my lifestyle. So what's important is that you over time find out what's going to work best for you through testing and measuring, but applying the fundamental principles which I'm going to cover in the next 6 key points to get the best results and not to disappoint yourself. The second reason why people don't get the results that they expect is their exercise selection. In this session I'm going to concentrate more on strength training or weight training for building muscle or building strength. And those two are very much related, by the way. If you want to get an increase in muscle size, you have to increase your strength, because if you don't get an increase in strength, why would your muscle size increase? Why do you have muscle hypertrophy? And we now from the research, I'm not going to cover it in this session, I covered it in my session on increasing muscle size from a scientific point of view, is that your initial increase in strength are more neuromuscular adaptations, and they can be maximized within a matter of anywhere from 3 to 6 months. And any further increases in strength beyond that is going to be more linked to an increase in muscle size, particularly for males. Now females it's not so much, because you don't have the testosterone levels as us males do. Therefore you still can put on a little bit of muscle, but not near as much as us males. And you can get more increases in strength through neuromuscular adaptations, and that still also applies to young children who haven't developed the levels of testosterone that an adult has, and also applies to the elderly, because as you get older your testosterone levels will start to decline. So this session is we're going to be focusing on strength and muscle size, which are interrelated, and I'm not going to go into the bits and pieces of that. But a lot of time people want big results, but they pick little exercises. And I have the simple philosophy is pick big exercises if you want to get big results. Because the body works as a whole, it doesn't work as an individual group of muscles. A lot of people program through what we call topographical anatomy. It means if I want to get a bigger bicep, there's the bicep, it originates up here on the anterior scapula, on the coracoid process, and the anterior superior glenoid cavity, and it goes across to the glenohumeral joint, it goes across the elbow joint, which is the hinge joint, and inserts into the radial tuberosity of the radius. And therefore it flexes the elbow. So that's how I work it. And then they go do that same principle, and they allocate an exercise for every individual muscle. Therefore they end up with a program with lots of different exercises, trying to hit all the different muscles. But basically the body doesn't work that way. It works in a functional manner. It works together. Everything works together. So the reason why it works together, because ultimately any exercises is stimulated by the nervous system, that activates the muscular system, that in turn then stimulates the endocrine or the hormonal system to release the appropriate hormones to get the work done during the exercise. But most of all, after that is to create a hormonal environment that's going to be conducive to create physiological change for the body, so it can adapt and get stronger or put on more muscle size. So when you go back to the gym, it can deal with that weight more effectively and efficiently and easily. So that's the whole point of training, is to really, the main point of training is to stimulate the whole body to activate the hormonal system. And the bigger and the more complex the exercise, the greater the stress on the whole body, the whole organism, the greater stimulus on the nervous system, the greater stimulus on the muscular system, and the greater stimulus on the, most importantly, the endocrine or the hormonal system. So what we found is that doing little exercises doesn't stimulate the nervous system to a greater degree because it's very isolated, and it doesn't stimulate a lot of muscle activity, and it definitely doesn't stimulate a lot of hormonal change, which stimulates the whole body. So therefore, if you want to get the best exercises to do, then pick the bigger, more complex, maybe more physically demanding. And people say, yeah, but they're hard. Well, of course they're hard. That's why they work, because they stimulate the whole body. So if you're going to do isolated exercises, there's a number of challenging things with isolated exercises, which I'm going to cover more in detail in my next Kmax. One of the things is a lot of the isolated exercises put isolated inappropriate stresses through the joints. So a lot of the isolated exercises are pretty much contraindicated in terms to the integrity of the joint, because a lot of the movements you do in isolation are not functional movements. They don't place stresses through the joint, they put stresses across the joint. So they put stresses across the joint, not through the joint. And I'm not going to go through that in detail in this session. I'm going to cover a whole session on the main reasons and the main movement patterns to avoid deterioration of joints and eventually injury. So first of all, isolated exercises, they can be quite unsafe if they're done repetitively under load, because they put isolated inappropriate stresses through joints, whether that be shearing forces or rotational forces or momentum forces through the joints that can eventually, when you get injured, you're not getting any results anyway. When you're injured, the game's over. You're going to be going backwards. The other thing with isolated exercises, they're not very functional. So if you're training for strength or function, then there's not many movements in life that you do isolated movements like that, because the body is a whole mechanism that works together in a multifaceted way. So they're also not very functional. And as I mentioned before, isolated exercises don't put a lot of physical stress on the whole body as a whole, activating the muscular, the nervous, and the endocrine system. Therefore, if you want to pick exercises, then it's best to pick big, compound, functional base exercises. And that basically means doing things like your bench presses or pushing movements, multi-joint pushing movements, multi-joint leg movements such as squats and lunges, bench press, chin-ups, multi-movement back exercises. And the beautiful thing about those is that, yes, they stimulate the whole body. When you finish, do a set of chins or a set of squats, you're like, oh my gosh, whew, your whole body is stimulated. You're glowing with electrical activity and nervous, neurological activity, muscular activity, and most importantly, hormonal activity. But if I just go and do a set of one-arm bicep curls, I walk away, have a chat, and do the other arm, then it's not putting a big stress on the body overall through all the systems in the body. So the beautiful thing with the compound exercises is that if I'm doing chins, for example, I'm working all the lats, I've got a heavy load, so compound movements, I have to get a high neural drive from the central nervous system going through the peripheral nervous system that stimulates, because it's a heavy load, because you can lift heavier loads with compound exercises. Heavier loads means you've got heavier load, more force on the muscle. More force in the muscle, therefore the body has to overcome that force through muscle activation. Therefore the muscles will activate more what we call motor units. More motor units, more muscle fibers being activated. More muscle fibers being activated, then you basically got all the carry-on effects of the hormonal system after that. Because I can lift heavier loads, I have to overcome greater force, greater motor unit reactivation, more muscle fibers, more tension, more stimulus overall. So big exercises, and we know this from the research. For example, if you do a 10 RM squat versus a 10 RM leg extension, you're going to get greater muscle activation in the quadriceps doing a 10 RM squat than you would in the leg extension exercise, because you're lifting heavier loads. Plus, you also get the added benefit of working all the other muscles in the body at the same time, which are also target muscles which you're probably targeting on other days, which means you don't have to do now. But most importantly, you're getting a greater stimulus on the endocrine system, because overall it's more physically demanding on the entire body. Plus, you also will be activating those small supplementary, or what we call assistant mover muscles, which you tend to want to do on another day or on another exercise, such as if I'm doing a chin up, I'm activating my lats and my long head of my teres major and my deltoid and my long head of tricep in doing a lat pull down, but I'm also activating my biceps to create elbow flexion. And when I'm doing this exercise, what muscles fatigues first, the biceps or the lats? Well, the biceps will fatigue first because that's the weakest link in the muscular chain of that compound based movement. So I'm getting plenty of bicep activation as well as plenty of latissimus dorsi and the associated muscles, the associated agonist assisted movement muscles, not to mention all the stabilizing muscles such as the deltoids and rotator cuff. So those big exercises get a greater stimulus, greater more muscle activation, greater force, greater neural drive, greater endocrine stimulus, plus I activate all those other little muscles that I'm trying to do separately in other workouts. So one of the big reasons why people don't get results is because they're just doing all these little exercises, hoping that all these little efforts will build up to give you one big effort, then one big result. We want you to just work with one big effort and one big exercise that stimulates everything, including all the smaller muscle groups, not just the targeted muscle groups. So we're looking at just doing those compound-based movements. Now, you probably have seen other bodybuilders or elite people or guru people, and they do all the other exercises. Now the question is, do they get the results because they're doing all those other little exercises on top of the big exercises, or can they just do the big exercise and get rid of all the little exercises and it will be done? You're going to get the result. And when you do the big exercise, you're also working all your core muscles, what people call the core, which is as your rectus abdominis, your transverse abdominis, your internal external obliques, your vertebratus, your rectus spinae, your quadratus lumborum, all these muscles here. So if you're doing squats, then there's no need to go and do all these fancy core exercises that put you in very complicated positions, in a very dysfunctional position, that hoping it's going to give you a result. Well, you're getting those results from the big exercises. So the big challenge I find with a lot of people, they spread their effort across lots of little dysfunctional, sometimes unsafe exercises, less effective exercises, when they can actually just put all their effort into just a handful of big exercises that will give him the big results, not just in the target muscle groups, but also all of the muscle groups, including the little muscles such as the muscles of the arms and the shoulders and the abdominals and the core and those particular areas. So do less better exercises, but do them better. I always say, put your body in a strong position to do a strong exercise, to lift a strong weight to get a strong result, and stop wasting your time with what I call all the little fluffy exercises or the little ones. Otherwise you're going to be in the gym all day long doing lots of little exercises hoping it's going to give you a bigger result. We'd rather do less, bigger effort, bigger result. The third component, that the reason why some people don't get results, is because simply they're just doing the wrong repetition range. They're doing the wrong rep range to get the result they want. Now I'm not going to go into detail because, as I've shared a couple of times, I've already done a full comprehensive session on this, on muscle building. But ultimately, if you want to get increases in strength and increases in muscle size, then you need to load the body with an overload, and a significant overload. If it's only a little overload, you're not going to get big results. You need to present a big overload relative to your ability and your genetics and your level of strength, naturally, because everything is relative. 100 kilos to one person is light and 100 kilos to another person is heavy. But it has to be relative to you to progress your results. So when it comes to repetitions, what do repetitions represent? They represent where the stimulus is placed on what we call your energy timeline. So your body has an energy timeline where the first 10 seconds of exercise, a maximal intense exercise to fatigue, anything in there is activating what we call the phosphate energy system, activating fast-twitch muscle fibers. And then you transition into lactates, like first gear, second gear, third gear. Your body only has 3 gears with a grey transition in between. And then the second energy system is the lactate energy system, where you start to use glycogen as a source of energy. That gives you a byproduct of lactic acid, and that goes from anywhere from 10 seconds up to around about 2 minutes, depending on how hard and fast you're going. So now you're using basically your sugars as a source of fuel. And as you go further down the energy timeline to failure or to fatigue, or when you can't do any more, as you go further down, you are starting to activate what we call your intermediate fibres, which are your fast oxidative glycolytic, where in the phosphate is a pure fast twitch fibres called fast glycolytic. And as you go further down, you start to activate your slow twitch muscle fibres as you enter the third energy system, which is the aerobic energy system, which is continuous rhythmical movement for long periods of time. So if you want to really build muscle, a lot of the muscle size comes from the bigger muscle fibres, and those muscle fibres are the fast twitch muscle fibres and even the intermediate fibres called your fast oxidative glycolytic. And to activate them, preferentially, you have to be working down near the phosphate energy system. If you're working with high repetitions, which is going down to the tail end of the lactate system or into the aerobic energy system, you're primarily activating your slow twitch muscle fibres. And with using an extreme example, if you look at the muscle size and structure of a 100-meter sprinter versus a marathon runner, marathon runners are more slow twitch muscle fibres, sprinters are more fast twitch genetically, but also their training is more conducive to slow rhythmical movements versus fast powerful movements such as a sprinter. So you need to express high amounts of force through the body, which means when it comes to repetition range, you're looking anywhere from 1 up to no more than 15 repetitions. Now also understand that some people are going to respond differently depending on what their rep range based on their muscle composition and their makeup of their fast versus slow twitch muscle contribution in the muscle belly, and everyone's going to be slightly different. So what I'm basically means is if you want to put on strength and muscle size, don't go down to the very high rep ranges, 15, 16, 20, 25, 30 repetitions, because now you're going right down to the lactate, aerobic, slow twitch muscle fibre environment, which is not conducive to putting on strength and muscle size. And ideally, you want to be working from a safety point of view. You can go down to the 1s and 2s and 3 repetition max, which are more done for the elite athletes or the high-powered athletes, the power lifters and even the bodybuilders. But for the general population, a good safe rep range is anywhere between the 6 to 10, and try to increase the weight as much as you can in that 6 to 10 range, because that's going to keep you in that probably around about 5 to 15 second range of the energy timeline, but also be close enough down to the phosphate system to activate your fast twitch and your fast oxidative glycolytic fibres, which is your intermediate fibres. So repetitions do count, and when I say repetitions, I mean you're doing that repetition as with the heaviest weight you can, where you're going to be coming very close, if not to fatigue or what we call failure, or you just can't do another repetition. So your reps have to be conducive, and some people respond better at 5, and some respond better at 10, and some better at 15. And I know when I was right into the bodybuilding, I found myself I was responding best at around the 3 to 5 rep range, but I had come across other people where they responded better around the 8 to 10. I'm not going to go down into the muscle physiology of that, but with testing and measuring, and obviously safety and how you feel and what effort you can put in and how it affects the joints, then you have to find that rep range is going to be best for you, and you may vary it a little bit from week to week depending on how you feel. And again, that's another topic where we can go more deeper into it, but pick the rep range which is going to be conducive for you to put on strength and put on muscle size safely, effectively, efficiently, and enjoyably. And this leads to point number 4, which is it's not always the repetitions. There's no magical numbers. The body can't count. It can't go, oh, you do hear sometimes 1 to 3 for power and 4 to 6 for strength and 6 to 12 for muscle hypertrophy. It's not like the body's going, okay, 1 rep, 2 rep, we're going power, power, power. You get the 4 rep and 5, oh no, now we're developing strength, and then you get from over 6 to 7, or you go, oh no, now we're going into hypertrophy, and then you get beyond 12 and say, oh, now we're going into endurance. It doesn't work that way. That's a very simplified, naive way to look at it. It's basically an energy timeline activating the muscle fibers. But my point being here is that it's not always important the exact number of repetitions, it's the effort you put in to the repetitions. And it's like when I look at exercise selection, you can do squats, you can do the great exercises, but if you're not putting a great effort into those exercises, then you're not going to get the best results. I guess it goes back to my nail file. The effort is, if I've got the stimulus, yes, and I'm going to apply the stress, and I'm going to Yes, I'm stressing the skin, but really I'm not actually applying any effort into it. I'm not actually pushing down on the skin, I'm just gently rubbing it off. So if I'm going to actually develop it, let's just start to push and make it work and apply a bit of pressure on it. So you have to be able to apply pressure on you, because remember, pressure makes diamonds. I'll put this little baby back. So when you do an exercise and you're doing your repetitions, you put as much effort into it as you possibly can. And I find a lot of people, what they do is they mark their way through their program. They go, many times I've come across people, they go, yeah, they're doing a bench press, they go 8, 9, 10. And I say, why'd you stop? It says, well, I hit 10. It says 10 repetitions. Well, it's not a number, it's a stimulus. So if you stop at 10 but you can do 15, you're not really creating an uncomfortable environment for the body to go, oh my gosh, I have to change because I can't handle this stress anymore. If I go out in the sun, for 3 minutes on a winter's day, I'm not going to get much of a stimulus to create a tan. So if I'm going to do this and I want to do it effectively, you want to make sure you apply an appropriate stress on there and actually push yourself. And I find a lot of people just don't train with the right intensity because they've never been taught the right intensity. I was in the gym just the other day with a young athlete, and we were doing the chest press, and I got him in there and I said, okay, let's go. And he says, oh, I can do about 10. Well, I ended up pushing him to do around about 18 repetitions. He wanted to stop at 10. I said, no, you got plenty more effort in you. Your mind wants to stop, but your body still has plenty of work to do. And I just had to click the mind, you can do this. And all of a sudden they pumped out more repetitions. They wanted to stop again. Says, why are you stopping? Because I can see that there's more gas in the tank to do the exercise. So my point being is it's not what you do, it's how well you do it. It's not the numbers, it's what you put into the numbers. It's not the exercise, it's what you put into the exercise. It's not the reps, it's what you put into the reps. So when you do an exercise, then do it to your best ability. Actually lift it and keep going until you cannot do any more. And even you can't do any more, do another one. Because it's all the reps that you do beyond that rep that you want to stop when you want to quit. It's those the reps that develop and stimulate the physiological change. Because everything up until then is quite achievable. Yes, I've achieved that. So once you get to, oh, I can't do any more, then do another one, because that's the one. And obviously do it with perfect form and perfect technique and with good execution, but don't let your mind stop you. Turn your mind on. When your mind wants to say stop, that's when you say go and do a couple more, because it's those extra ones you do beyond what you can't think you're going to do. It's going to take you beyond your comfort zone into that new zone of developing strength or developing muscle size. So what I see, a lot of people just don't train with enough intensity or effort. So you pick your repetitions, anywhere between maybe 5 to 12, and then put as much effort in there. And I always say this, do as many repetitions as you can, but once you get over 10, put the weight up, and they'll pop you back down to 6, 7 with good form and good technique, and keep going, and don't stop at a number. Don't stop at what is on the card. Just stop when you can't do another one and then do another one. If you get over 10, that's the trigger to put the weight up to bring you back down. And you find you within that cycle, you'll keep progressing and progressing and progressing, keep getting increases in strength, increasing muscle size, and obviously all the great byproducts of that. You get increase in metabolism and function and energy expenditure and all those other great benefits. So it's not what you do, it's what you put in what you do that's going to determine what you get out of what you do. Which leads me to the number 5. Number 5 is if you're putting everything you got into what you do, then you're not going to do what you do very much. There's an inverse relationship between intensity or effort and volume or duration. So if I'm going for a run, the faster I run, the shorter I can run. If I plug jog, I can go forever, but if I sprint, I can only go for a short period of time. And the same applies with strength training. So the more you do, the less you're going to put in what you do. And I talked about this in exercise selection. If you're doing lots of little exercises, you subconsciously just divide your effort across the session. If I say to you, for example, we're going to go for an hour run, how fast would you start? You'd start plodding along, and probably the fastest time you'd run would be in the last maybe minute heading towards the finish line. So that's very interesting. The more you do, the less you put in what you do. If I say we're going to go into a 100-meter track and we're going to do 30 100-meter sprints, how much effort are you going to put in the first one? You're already psychologically pacing yourself, if not defeated, before you even start. But if I say, hey, we're just going to do 2 100-meter sprints, then you're going to put everything into it. Just because a lot of times strength training is not just the makeup of the program, the exercise selection, the reps, the sets and all that, but it's the mindset of what you go into the program. So if I only have a short period of time, then I'm going to really put into it, because quality is better than quantity. It's not how much I do it, it's how well I do it that actually counts. So what I find a lot of times is people just do, as I said in the earlier point, is they do too many exercises, too many ineffective exercises, and I also find they just do too many sets. You know, they say, well, we have to do 3 sets or 4 sets or 5 sets, and that's not necessarily correct. The research actually shows it doesn't matter how many sets you do, it's what you put into the set that counts. But the more sets you do, the more you're going to pace yourself through this. And I've done this many times in training elite athletes who used to do lots of sets, and they just brought them down to 1 set, and all of a sudden, bam, they just put everything into it, because they don't get a second bite of the apple. They don't get that second opportunity to put their best effort. So therefore, they're going to put a better effort. If for a little exercise, if you were to test this, go on the floor and do as many push-ups as you possibly can till you cannot do another push-up, not one single extra push-up, and then ask yourself, and you only do 1 set. But if I said we're going to do 5 sets of push-ups, then what would you do at the first set? You'd pace yourself. Or 3 sets, you'd pace yourself rather than just doing 1 good set. So you're better off doing 1 great set than 3 average sets. Consciously, or many times subconsciously, pacing yourself through the first, second, third set so you can get through the workload, rather than maximizing the workload by just doing 1 set. So it's not about how many sets you do, it's about getting prepared for your best set. And once you've done your best set, why do you need to do it again? If you've done your best maximal set, means what you've done is you maximally activated the motor units to perform that lift with that weight to your maximal ability. And if you do another set, then you'd find the repetitions are going to probably drop because you're fatigued. So if the repetitions has dropped, that means you're not activating the same number of motor units. You're activating a lesser number of motor units and muscle fibers because you can't complete the same amount of workload or amount of force. Therefore, you're fatigued. So what you're basically doing is you're getting diminishing returns with each set. And sometimes people actually reduce the weight on the next set, third set, fourth set. But if you're reducing the weight, then you're reducing the force, you're reducing the motor unit recruitment, the number of muscle fibers have been activated, you're reducing the stimulus, and you're reducing the tension of the muscle. So what you're basically doing is with every extra set, you're doing a weaker set. Isn't the whole point of strength training is to get stronger? So you're better off getting all your energy and putting into your best exercise and finding your best set. Now you may need to do maybe 1, maybe 2 preparation sets, people call warm-up sets, but make sure in those warm-up sets you're not inducing fatigue, because if you fatigue yourself in the warm-up sets, you're taking away from the most important set, which is the working set, or I like to call the result set. If I come into this room and I turn the light switch on, I have to turn it on once, and it gives me the light. It's maximal stimulus from the light switch, which is the central nervous system, the peripheral nervous system, the nerves to the light. It activates, it connects to the light through the electrode, and it turns the light on 100%. I don't turn the light switch on, off, because I have to turn the light on, off 3 times, 3 sets to get the best result. No, you just turn the light switch on once and do it well. Do it properly the first time. You won't have to do it the second time. If you keep doing it 2, 3, 4 times, all you're doing is wearing out the light switch and the light bulb. You're turning it on and off, you tend to, and that can lead to what we call overtraining, diminishing returns, and eventually injury, because now you're increasing the volume of repetitive stresses in the body. Remember, the purpose of strength training is not to wear the body out, but to stimulate it. So if you're doing lots of exercises and lots of sets, you're doing a lot of wear and tear, and particularly because you're doing lots of exercises and lots of sets, you're not putting 100% effort into any of them, because the exercises are poor selected exercises. You're doing lots of sets, you reduce the effort, therefore you're basically all you're doing is wearing the joints out, mentally, physically wearing out, because you're in there for long periods of time. You're not focusing, you're not putting 100% in, and you're just going through the movements hoping you're going to get results. So just do less movements, less sets, less exercises, put a massive effort in, and pick the best exercises. Might be squats, might be bench press, might be chins, anywhere between 3, maximum probably 6 exercises, because if you really put the maximal effort into 3 to 6 compound-based exercises, you should be pretty well tanked. And the purpose of strength training is not to walk out feeling completely fatigued, it's about to walk out completely stimulated. Remember, you're there to stimulate the body, not wear out the muscles, wear out the tendons, wear out the joints, wear out the nervous system, and wear out the endocrine system. So how many sets do? You do your best set. Now, you may need to lead up sets. If you do a set and you feel that I didn't quite get that because I lost my form a little bit, that's fine. Have a rest, recover, regenerate all your energy in your muscles and go and do the set properly. But if you've done your best set, then what's the use of doing it? Unless you're going to improve on that set, increase the reps or increase the weight. If you can't increase the reps or can't increase the weight, don't do another set because you're wasting your time. Now you're going down to maybe training for endurance or just wearing yourself out and wearing out the joints and maybe eventually injury. So quality over quantity means short, brief, intense, maximum effort. Get out there and let the body recover for your next session. So back to my file, frequency of application of the stimulus and the stress to the body. Because when I develop the callus, and this is my next point, point number 6, when I present the stimulus and the stress, what's it doing to the skin? It's wearing the skin down. And the body's the same. When I present a load, not as what it's not accustomed to, that's what's called an overload, it's a load beyond what you're normally used to, then I'm actually fatiguing. I'll get a decrease in performance, I feel fatigued, and then I need to recover, regenerate, and then eventually overcompensate. So the stimulus part, this is the weight training part, and if I keep doing that, I'm just going to eventually wear the skin down to the bone. You'll start to bleed and cause more damage than good. But if I get this right, then I give it time to recover and let it recover, regenerate, and then overcompensate by laying down a thicker layer of skin, and then I present it again. So therefore, when does the body recover? It recovers in between your training sessions. You don't grow during the training. You don't get stronger during the training. You're wearing the body down so it can recover, regenerate, and get stronger. We call that the overcompensation or supercompensation process. So it happens in the recovery. So therefore, we have to make sure you have adequate recovery, quality recovery to maximize your results. So same with I'm getting a tan. If I go out in the sun and I get really burnt today, then I'm not going to go out tomorrow because then I'm just going to really burn myself into a crisper. What I would do if I want to develop a tan over time safely and properly, then I would make sure I recover, let the skin recover, then go and present myself to the sun again. And remember, some people can go in the sun every day and they don't get burnt, and they just get browner and browner, and people like me get pinker and pinker and redder. So again, there's going to be an individual component of all of this. As I said, to point number 1 is you have to sort of test and measure how much your body can handle and how frequently it can handle. So the frequency of training is really important. The frequency of how often I present the stress and the stimulus is really important to maximize my regeneration. So generally speaking, the harder I train, the more rest I need, because the harder I train, the more stress, the more load, the more microscopic damage, the more neural, muscular, endocrine fatigue, therefore the more time the body needs to recover. But if I'm just doing a gentle presentation, then the next day, and it's only gentle, then I'm doing a lot of activity, taking up a lot of time with a gentle stimulus that gives me a tiny result, but I'm actually allocating a massive amount of time to get the result. I'm not getting when you look at the return on investment, my return on time, I think I'm doing a lot of training, but really I'm not really getting a lot of results, because it's probably because my stress is not quality. I'm not training with a great effort. I'm not training with the right exercises, with the right rep range, with the right intensity in it. It's too gentle, and I'm doing it every day, and I'm taking a lot of my time, taking a lot of my life, because time is valuable these days in this busy, noisy world, but I'm not getting results. So I start to just get demotivated, rather than just putting a quality stress in and give you plenty of time to recover. So therefore you can do all the other things that are important in your life, and you're going to increase your recovery between one session to the other, because you're presenting a better intensity, a greater stress with greater quality. So how long can it take? Well, we do know that muscle soreness, people will say, I'll put my little file down again, muscle soreness, or without the late onset muscle soreness, which is really All that is, it's not lactic acid as some people think it is. It's more the microscopic tears in the sarcomeres in the muscle, which means they're like little, put on the microscope, they're little tiny explosions. The micro-inflammation, they push up against the nerve endings and you feel pain. I'm feeling one today because I did a good lunge session yesterday, and I only do strength training once a week for my sport. And even back in the bodybuilding days, I used to train 6 days a week. What I found through over time, I started learning about physiology and anatomy and endocrinology. I realised I didn't have to do that amount of training, so I was getting better results training 1 to 2 sessions a week, which only lasted around about a half hour. And the last time I competed in bodybuilding, not that I'm an elite bodybuilder, but I still got great results, ended up winning my championship, I was only training once a week, and I was just picking anywhere 3, 4, 5 compound based exercises, doing all the things which I share with you today, and having 7 days rest. Because muscle soreness can, we say they peak after around about 48 hours, and that's when it peaks. So you can actually get a bit of discomfort, and not that you need muscle soreness to get results, because muscle soreness is just a symptom of the inflammation, the microscopic tears pushing up against the nerve endings. So you can still have that microscopic damage. It's a good damage, it's microscopic, but it may not necessarily push up against the nerve endings enough to cause a uncomfortable delayed onset muscle soreness. So even though you're not sore in a muscle, it doesn't mean you haven't actually created the stimulus for that muscle to adapt. So soreness is not always a good indicator, particularly as you adapt it to biomechanically to an exercise. So what we do know is that that's where it peaks. So if you really put a great effort with a great quality stimulus, with with a good load, it can take up to 7 days and sometimes beyond, depending on the muscle. Some bigger muscles, such as the legs, can take longer. It can take up to 7+ days for that muscle to recover from fatigue, regenerate, and overcompensate. And then that can take 7 days. And I found even sometimes the legs, for example, when I was training elite Olympians and elite bodybuilders, that I'd only train their legs once every 2 weeks, and maybe the upper body once a week, because I found that was a good combination, because the legs really put a lot of stress, not just on the muscular system, but on the nervous system, the endocrine system, because remember, they have to recover too. So it's not just recovering of muscle. A lot of people focus on muscle, but muscles recover, and the muscles are driven by the nervous system. So neural fatigue can set in, and you look at the symptoms of overtraining. You're flat, you're de-energized, you're not motivated, your performance is going down, you feel weak, and a lot of those symptoms can be neurological. Not to mention the hormonal systems, where you feel really, just not right. You feel emotional, you feel flat, you feel depressed, you feel anxious. They're all hormonal side effects. So you have to make sure not just the muscular system recovers, but the nervous system and the endocrine system. So basically, the harder you train, the more rest you need. The less hard you train, the less rest you need. So if people don't train very hard, then they can probably train more frequently, but that doesn't mean they're going to get as good a results, because the stimulus is not really putting a high amount of stress. Remember, pressure makes diamonds. Not much pressure, no diamonds. So the person who puts the most pressure on their body ends up being the most valuable gemstone in the jewelry store. So, and it's all relative to you. So my point being, if you've got to do it, put an effort in and do it the best you can, and then that's going to give you plenty of time to recover. In that time, might be 5 days, 6 days, 7 days, maybe up to 2 weeks of recovery. Then you can do lots of other things. It's not like you can't go and do some cardio classes or some boxing or some jogging or some, whatever it might be, some of the other activities or sports that aren't high intense strength training. They might be cardiovascular or circuit training. But when it comes to strength training, one of the big things I find is people just train too frequently. They do too many sets, they do too many exercises, and they just train too frequently. And what that basically does is it just sucks your time out of your life, and you're not getting the results that you want. And you're thinking, with all this amount of time, I've seen people who train 5 days a week, 6 days a week, 2 hours a day. They've been doing it for years, and I look at them and I think, geez, I would have expected a far better result from the amount of time and effort that you've put in. Maybe you can probably, through less time, more effort, train smarter, not longer, train harder, not longer, and then really stimulate. Remember, the whole point of strength training is to stimulate the body for it to regenerate and overcompensate, and that time frame can take up to at least 7 days, and you're better off having 1 or 2 extra days rest than 1 or 2 days before you recovered, because if you train when you're not recovered, then you're not going to go into your next exercise session 100% firing, ready to go. You're better off, it's better to over recover than under recover, because under recover will lead to diminishing returns, because you're wearing your body down or into and eventually a plateau, decrease in performance, and eventually injury. So even if I am getting a good stimulus, a good effort on a great exercise, and I get the stimulus on it, the stress, the physiological change, if I don't give that muscle, that joint, that tendon, the nervous system, endocrine system to recover, and I come back and I train it again too early without providing that recovery and overcompensation, then all I'm doing is I'm providing a good stimulus, not giving enough time to recover by giving it maybe 1 day, and going again and not giving enough time to recover, and going again, and eventually all I'm going to do is wear the skin down to the bone. If I go in the sun too frequently at high intensity sun rays, then I'm going to burn myself into a crisper. So even if you're training with good quality, it's important that you allow that time frame for the muscular system, the tendons and the joints and the endocrine system and the nervous system and your mental attitude to fully recover. Otherwise, that will lead to overtraining, diminishing returns, a training plateau, decrease in performance, and eventually an injury. And you've got to take a special note for those people who divide their body up and do what we call split programs. So I'll work the upper body today and the lower body tomorrow. I'll work the chest, shoulders and tries today and the back and biceps tomorrow. That can also be quite hazardous because the body doesn't work in isolation. The body works as a whole. So the same nervous system activates the leg, the same nervous system activates the chest exercise, the same nervous system activates your back. The same hormonal changes occur on all those particular exercises, maybe a bit more for the bigger exercises. But you also have a lot of common muscles that are involved in those movement patterns. For example, if I'm doing a bench press, I work the deltoids and I also work the tris and the rotator cuff and the biceps. But if I do a pull exercise, I'm also working the deltoid, the rotator cuff, and to a lesser degree the biceps and the triceps, because these are multi-joint, smaller muscles that go across the shoulder joint that work in both movement patterns, but particularly those muscles, the stabilizers, the synergistic, the little muscles such as the rotator cuff, the ones that are more prone to injury, they work in both movement patterns. So even though you're thinking you're giving your chest a rest when you're doing a back day and giving your back a rest when you're doing a chest day, on both days you're working your deltoids, you're working your rotator cuff and the smaller muscle groups. So if you overtrain those smaller muscle groups, the weakest link in the chain, they will eventually decrease in their capacity, they'll decrease their diminishing returns, their training plateau, and the weak links get weaker, which means when you do big exercises, when those weak links get weaker, you can't perform your big exercise to the best ability because you're only as strong as your weakest link. Therefore, you never actually activate your bigger muscles, your target muscle groups, as well as you like, because you're hindering their performance by overtraining the weaker links, being the stabilizers and the synergistic muscle groups. So even if you're training with high quality, you have to be even special careful to get the recovery for those muscles and joints and the tendons, because the signs of overtraining will be tight muscles, you start to see achy joints, tendonitis, and that will go and lead to eventually a breakdown in your physical body, mentally and physically. And it's also important that regularly in your program, you might be training, say, 4, 5, 6 weeks. I also would say after every six weeks of high quality strength training, have a good week off. Just let the whole body recover. And you may, I'm not saying you go sit at home and sit on the couch eating chips, watching Netflix. It means you don't do any strength training. Do some cardio, a bit of cross training, or do some swimming, whatever it might be. But just let the body recover and regenerate the nervous, the endocrine and the muscular system from all that intense activity. And that intense activity, if you're doing a program, which is a full body program, for example, it might be, and that's what I do, and a lot of my elite athletes I was working with in Olympic level athletes and even bodybuilders, we'll training, we'll do 1 or 2 exercises for your push movements, compound push movements, 1 or 2 exercises for your pull movements. You pick your 2 favorite ones, whether it be a row or a chin up. 1 or 2 compound exercises for your legs, might be squats or lunges or maybe even leg press if function is not so much important to you. and put 100% in and do that on once a week, and you get a whole week fully recovered. But the other thing is, when you go into your next training session after a week, you go in there really excited because you've missed it and you're ready to, okay, I want to, and when you're doing it, you're thinking to yourself, I've got 7 days before I do this again, so I better do it properly. And when you do go in, you go in full firing on full cylinders because you're fully recovered, mentally excited about it, not going, oh, it doesn't matter if I have an average one today because I'll make up for it tomorrow. No, you have to do it properly because there's no second bites to the apple, there's no second sets, no second exercises, no second session tomorrow. Plus, what that also does is free up a lot of your time to do other activities, whether they be exercise and training activities or recreational activities or family activities or hobby activities, whether that might be. Because I find a lot of people, they spend a lot of time training and the results are just not coming back and they're not getting a good a return on their invested time into training. And that leads to my last point, number 7, is why people don't get results. And one of the reasons why they don't get results is they set up a program which they can't get results or keep results for the rest of their life. It's like setting up a diet plan. A lot of people go into a diet, they follow this strict diet which they don't really enjoy because they're cutting out all the things they love and they're eating things that they don't love, but they're going to get the weight loss. They lose the weight loss, you lose the weight after 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 weeks. They go, yes, I've dropped it. And then you meet them again 2 months later or a year later and they put it on plus interest because they've set an eating plan that is not conducive for to be maintained for the rest of their life. We have this principle called the Smarties principle, whether it be training applied to training or applied to nutrition or anything that you do. Smartie means, S means something you can stick to for the rest of your life. M has to be in moderation to your life. It has to be, A has to be achievable. So doing an elite bodybuilding program may not be achievable for you. It has to be realistic. It has to be time efficient. It has to be interesting. It has to be enjoyable. And the last one, it has to be based on some form of science or common sense to get the best out of it. But if you can't stick to it for the rest of your life, it's only a short-term achievement. And then if you can't sustain it, so a lot of the time programs are designed where you have to fit your life into the program rather than design a program that fits into your life. So every time I used to work with elite athletes, I'd look at their workload, whether it be an Olympic level kayaker or a major league baseballer or rugby union player, whatever it might be, and I'd look at what they're doing, and then I would have to wedge the training program into their sporting agenda or their sporting training in their life that complements and supplements and benefits their life, doesn't contradict or take away from their lives. So if you're a person who's really busy because you've got a family with 4 kids or you've got a big business and you're spending 80 hours a week in your business, or you're really busy, then you have to design the program accordingly. I want you to think about this. If you have 2 twins, identical twins, and they both want to put on muscle, one is unemployed and they basically live off nothing, they sit at home and they're always resting and they have this pretty cruisy type lifestyle, and they can eat when they want. And the other twin, they got a building business and they're working 80 hours a week in a physical labourers type occupation, and they have a family of 4. You're not going to set up the same program for both of those people because they have different stresses in their life. This one here has probably got better times to recover. They're pretty cruisy. This one doesn't have as much time to recover. So therefore, if you give them the same program, this one will probably fail on this program. And if you give this program to this one, this person might get bored on that program. So you have to really design the program around not just people's goals, but most importantly their long-term goals, how long they want to achieve that goal, and then also take a massive consideration into their changing lifestyle, how busy they are, how stressed they are, how active they are, how physically demanding their life is, and then design the program around that. And most importantly, you design it so they can stick to it for the rest of your life. Now, that might be a little bit different when you're dealing with elite athletes who their life is the next 4 years to the Olympics, so they're happy to devote their whole life and sacrifice everything in their life to that Olympic dream. Therefore, it's not something they have to do for the rest of their life, but because they're going to do lots of other things, they'll be able to do a program and they're highly motivated for it. But the general population who have, the mere mortals of us, we have a busy lifestyle, we want to get great results, we have to be smarter about it to be able to fit it into our lifestyle, not force fit my lifestyle into my program, because I have to keep compromising my lifestyle into my program, then I will start to push my program out. Because you remember, in people's lives, you have to list their priorities, and obviously some of their priorities will be their family, it might be their career, it might be money, it might be their children, it might be their sport, and you're going to find their strength training is going to be a little bit down there. Very rarely is strength training at the top. Even an elite athlete, unless you're a powerlifter, Olympic lifter, or a bodybuilder, that's where it's at the top. But most people, it's going to be a tiered level of importance. So you have to make sure you don't design a program that's designed for the top tier when really it's not their top tier, because it won't start there for very long. They'll pop it off because they're not going to compromise their family, their career, their money, their children for that. So, but if you can make it integrated in that, then it's going to be there for the rest of their life. Because ultimately, when you set up goals with people, how long would you like to achieve, when would you like to achieve the goal, but most importantly, how long would you like to keep the benefit of that goal? And I'm going to find that most people want to do that. They will lose the weight, put on muscle, get stronger for the rest of their life. So make sure when you design a strength training program, you maximize all the components which I shared in previously, but then design it specifically for their life so it becomes a part of their life and doesn't compromise their life. Because if it compromises their life, they will give it up. That is for sure. So see you in the next Kmax.